I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. I'll note that all board members are present with the exception of Council President Hudson, who is excused. And we will move to the first item on our agenda, which is the September 28th, 2023 minutes. I will entertain a motion to accept the minutes. Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. All right, next up we have our secretary report, and I'll turn it over to Joe.
Yes, good morning, Mayor and board members. Unlike last meeting, I have a few things to report. All good.
Let me know when you want the drum roll.
Well, we learned late yesterday that the governor signed the amendment for the Phase 3 extra funding.
It's great.
Which was perfect timing because today we officially, I guess, close out Phase 2 with the final program manager report.
Right.
And we begin to consider the Phase 3 process.
No rest for the weary, right? Phase 2 is done, on to Phase 3. That's great, though. Great news.
Somewhere on paper, there's a Phase 4, so we're halfway through.
Bring it.
On a more unfortunate note, I wanted to acknowledge it is Donna Harris's last JSCB meeting. On a personal note, she will be missed. Her financial expertise has been greatly appreciated as we've gone through these projects.
Congratulations, Donna. And thank you. We'll look forward to your final report.
That completes my report.
Okay. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have our program manager report. I'll turn it over to Chris.
Good morning.
Morning.
So what you have in front of you this morning is a little bit different than our typical. The legislation asked that the request that we put together kind of a final summary report that didn't have a ton of detail as to what that was to include, but wanted to highlight some of the accomplishments as we went through. There also is a final budget report that's been attached there for your review that just kind of wraps that up, and you can see that we do have a little bit of a hold left on there. You'll see, and that's we have one open claim that's to cover the cost of that should that come to fruition. So that is the only cost that's hanging out there in terms of that. Beyond that, happy to report that all final payments have been made. All final cost reports, with the exception of Elms, have been filed with the State Education Department, and so we're there in terms of being complete. So, and before I forget, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody in the room here. Been involved in this for 7+ years, and so I appreciate the opportunity to work with folks. We've accomplished a lot, and feels good. Feels good to get there. So, just to speak to some of the results, I mean, largely I wanted to just highlight a few of these. The natural light. I mean, we put windows in a lot of replacement windows, but we also put windows in places where we never had windows, and that's just if you walk into a room and you see the picture of that before and after, it really is significantly improved. With respect to that, the indoor air quality, I kind of lost track of how many units we replaced, but we replaced a lot of units in the building. We were able to amplify those air changes in the spaces. We were able to add air conditioning into a lot of places, and I think also Tom and his facilities group will probably see a little bit of a difference in the bills this year with respect to the efficiencies gained. At the same time, also garnering about $800,000 in rebates from National Grid for those energy savings. On that. On the ADA improvement side of this, a lot of our building entrances and egress paths were improved greatly to allow better accessibility into the buildings, as well as identifying some the areas of rescue in places where we have stairs that didn't necessarily have an elevator in proximity, so we were able to create some of those spaces as well, so buildings are more accessible with respect to that. And then safety and improvement. The PA, the fire alarm, fire suppression systems, and security systems and cameras, all of which were enhanced. And I think the ability to have cameras in places, a lot more places than you did previously, so significant improvement there. And then library and media centers and improvements. We built out several libraries and improved a lot of the library spaces, which was great. And cafeteria and kitchens, we did a couple new ones and we reconfigured a few. And I think they have also realized a lot of efficiencies with those serving lines and the configurations thereof. So it was a good thing. So, and then just, they asked for just, a recommendation, and don't know that I'm qualified to give that recommendation, but from my perspective, I think we were successful with respect to accomplishing, the intended scope of work that we needed to. We identified, we accomplished it with respect to the goals that were set out in terms of the diversification plan and the goals established with that. So I would say, as a whole, I think it was a great project, and everybody in the room should be proud of it. So that's where I'm at. Thank you. Any questions?
Questions for Chris? So Chris, is this the last we'll see of you, or?
I don't know.
Oh, good answer. Good answer.
Hopefully not.
Okay.
Hopefully not.
But
yeah.
as it relates to phase 2.
As it relates to phase 2, yeah, we're there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good.
So
Well, job well done.
Thank
I think, again, lots to be proud of, lots to learn from going into phase 3.
Certainly.
So, but kudos to you and your team. Been great to work with, and really proud of what we've accomplished together.
I am as well. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. I mentioned all board members are present. Just want to acknowledge we have Pamela Odom here representing Superintendent Davis. So, Pam, nice to have you with us again. Okay, so next up, speaking of goodbyes, is our financial statement report. So, Donna, come on down.
Good morning.
Morning.
Okay, I have the full report for you today. I kind of combined August and September together just to give you a final on this last one. So I'm going to start down on page 5, so that might give you the opportunity to turn there if you like, where all the numbers are. So some of our highlights for the month were we did obtain some more rebates from National Grid, and we did have vendor payments that were approved in September. The ones that were approved in September will be recorded in the October statement. As you know, all the statements that I give are with actual numbers that come off the statements, so sometimes we lag. So on page 5, at the end of June, we had $12.7 million of phase 1 and phase 2 cash. So compared to the August statement, our cash did increase by $193,000. And that was because of vendor payments and the National Grid rebate that we received. Also, the numbers have been updated for the capital assets. That number, that $407,624,000 figure is the current figure for closed projects. So that is as of 6/30/23, we had $150 million in phase 1 closed projects. We have $248 million in closed phase 2 projects. We still have $38 million sitting in construction in progress because Henniger and Elms won't get closed until 23-24, okay? And then we had less accumulated depreciation. So that's where that stands. It's a $407 million for capital assets, which by the time we're done, we're going to be looking at about $450 million, okay? So our total liabilities for the close of June is $357.2 million, and that does include our bonds and premium payable for both phase 1 and phase 2 projects. And those are current numbers. That is what we are going to currently pay this year for bond payments, that $34.5 million. So at the end of September, our total unaudited net position is $63 million. So now I'm going to move on to page 6. And that's our statement of sources and expenditures. Not a lot there. We did have $3,400 in earnings investments on phase 1, and that was due to some of the bond money. We did earn some interest there. Also, we did earn some interest in phase 2 on some of the bond funds of $16,000. You'll see there the $262,000 we did take in from National Grid, and that's a total, and we are done. The total that we received, we'll go over that in another couple pages. And to this point, for July, August, and September, we have paid out $112,000. And now I'm going to move on to the next page, which is page 7. And that's our cash flow statement. Now, our cash flow statement, you'll notice here, it does show the actuals for July, August, and September. October is going to reflect what was approved at the September meeting. And you can see there those large numbers for the construction and incidental. Those were our final payments to for the Henniger project. So those will show up in our October statements. And then November, of course, whatever is approved today will get paid and be recorded in October or November. So as you can see there, the rest of that projection, everything going out for the rest of the year is all debt service, okay? Debt service intercepts the aid coming in, and it's going to be debt service payments going out. So we show at the end of next June with a total of $9.7 million left, of which $6 million is going to be for the November debt service payment, November of next year, okay? And so that leaves us with about 3.7, which will be transferred to the bond funds and make debt service payments with the rest of that money. But it won't happen, it's not going to happen probably until, it'll happen in the 24-25 school year. So we'll kind of see a little bit of that hanging out until that happens, okay? And then all of what I just reported to you is up to September 30. So now I'm going to move on to page 8. And page 8, I took us to November 30th, okay? And why I did that was because I wanted to include the payments that were approved in September, everything that's lagging behind. I wanted to pull everything together, and that includes the ones that you're going to approve today, okay? I'd like to think you're going to approve Turner's last payment. So I did include that. So I just wanted you to get an idea of where we landed on phase 2, that we had a total at the top there, a total income of $293 million, and that was bond proceeds, $287 million. And then our investment income, we earned $3.7 million. We had our total National Grid, you'll see there was $850,000. So that contributed to all of our income. Now, I know you might be asking, okay, so $293 million was our sources, but, you know, what about, I thought we were at $300 million. Well, we did. We borrowed $299 million. We paid out $9 million in capitalized interest. This report does not reflect capitalized, it doesn't reflect any of our debt, okay? It only shows actuals. So we did spend $9 million in capitalized interest. That's one of the things that my predecessor and I did work on diligently and came up with a plan to try to eliminate capitalized interest in phase 3, and I think we may be able to accomplish that. And so we did spend out that sources were $293 million, and then we did spend out a total expenditures of $289 million, and so that leaves us with a little bit of money in the bank. Okay, as I just reported to you. So we did very well compared to phase 1. We kept our incidentals way down, okay, as opposed to phase 1, and we did very well. I think everybody managed this program very well. I'm very pleased with how everything turned out. We had a great team. Turner was great. I can't say enough about their team. They're wonderful people, and of course, city staff was incredible to work with. So. Thank you. I really appreciate. Stop. I appreciate everybody that I worked with here. It was awesome, and I look forward to seeing you again. I'll stop by and visit.
You're always welcome.
Thanks, guys. Does anybody have any questions on anything I just reported?
I have a question.
Yes.
Does your successor have a clue as to what's going on? In this?
No.
Because if
No,
not,
I don't
you
have
can't
it.
leave. I'm sorry.
I don't have a successor yet.
I pose
They're
a motion
working on
that
it.
we keep her on.
They're working on it, okay? And I'm sure they'll be wonderful. They'll be just as good. But yeah, I'll help out in that little bit of training there, so no problem. Thank you.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Looking at phase 1 and then at phase 2, the investment income, what was the change that made the investment income increase so dramatically? And what can we do for phase 3 to keep that going?
I think that was more of a learning curve than anything, okay? We did have, phase 1 was very new to everyone, okay? And I think, I don't know for sure, but I know that that we did not invest very little in phase 1 bonds, very little. It just wasn't a practice at that point in time. And I think we learned that in phase 2, we could invest more without the possibility of having to pay taxes on it, okay? So I think it was more of a learning thing. And not only that, the interest rates were incredible pre-COVID. When COVID hit, we bottomed out. So we made most of that prior to COVID. That was up to 2020. So I think that was pretty much why. But the commissioner is always constantly looking at that, so. Thank you.
Can't let you go with
Yeah.
one last quick question. The
Sure.
audit will be presented next month?
Yes, the audit will be presented. It's going very smoothly. No hiccups at this point. Everything looks good. And Bonadio will be here at the next meeting to present the final financial statement. So there will be nothing more to report. So there'll be no more reports coming, and of course, until, phase 3 gets off the ground. And then my predecessor will more than likely be in front of you.
Thank you so much, Tom.
Okay?
Thank you.
Anything else?
Great
Yeah,
job.
No problem. Thank you.
Really well done. Thank you. All right. Okay, next up, looks like we have one resolution, so I'll turn it back over to Joe.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We have resolution number 11, which would pay our few bills for the last month of September.
Motion. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Okay, so speaking of phase 3, we've got some updates. At the last meeting, we had asked for some updates, and so it looks like we have a presentation and then another resolution relative to the diversity plan. So turn it over to Tom Ferrara.
Okay, thank you.
Morning, Tom.
Carmen's going to drive, so we're going to cover sort of where we came from for some of our newer members and some other people. Sorry you had all lived through this, but we'll, you want to hit the next slide, Carmen? So if you take a look at the school, and Karen, you've seen some of this. Some of this was presented to the school board a few months ago. But the city school district, we have 35 school buildings. 2 buildings are used for swing space, so they're not occupied. We have 5 administration and operation buildings, 4.6 million square feet of space. We have a lot of square footage of space, a lot of buildings. Our average age of our building is 83 years. So we have our newest buildings were built in the early 70s. We need over $500 million of repairs and renovations. Now, that doesn't include new programming. So we're adding, like, when we add a welding lab like we added at Corcoran. That's not included, no career technical work. So when you start adding additional programming, we're asking for even more money to get everything up to snuff. So Carmen, can you hit the next slide, please? So if you go back, some of you may have worked on this. In January of 2011, we did a district-wide master plan. We had a firm come in, looked at the entire district, looked at feeder patterns, looked at where kids lived and what schools they were going to. And it was sort of a blueprint for JSCB phase 2, 3, and 4. The original plan was 4 phases of JSCB, and after we got through JSCB phase 1, we realized we had to make some changes. And one of the unique things they found was a lot of cities in the Northeast had lost significant population and could close schools. So Buffalo, for example, they closed 25% of their schools. We're looking very stable. We were looking at about between 19,000 and 21,000 students for the next 20 years, and that's pretty much where we are. We've had a little dip during the pandemic, but we really do not have the luxury like Buffalo could say, you know what, we're not going to renovate this building because we don't need it. We need all our buildings, basically. And basically, because of the borrowing and swing space and things like that, it's going to take a while to get everything done, but we've made a lot of good progress. Next slide, please. Sure.
Since the news of Micron and the news this week about this being a corridor, are we still thinking it's going to be stable or that there's going to be an increase?
I'm going to look at Deputy Superintendent. Do you know anything? I don't know any new numbers or anything on enrollment. Do you, or projections? So the good news is we do have 2 schools that we could, open up, and we're going to be gaining capacity through the STEAM high school too.
So to add and continue the conversation, is the district sitting down and really contemplating what an additional 40,000 employees in central New York is, how it's going to impact? We're talking about people that work there with families. We could see an increase in the population of 100 to 150,000 people. Have we even given that a thought? Or is there a process? And I realize that phase 3 was designed well before Micron had even, walked across the county line. But I think we really, as a community, need to start to grab a hold of this quickly, because you don't fix or build school buildings in a year and a half like Micron builds factories. So just something for all of us, food to think about.
Points well taken. On behalf of the city, challenge accepted. Certainly thinking about it, but to your point, Karen and Steve, planning for it is a whole other thing. Something we need to.
Don't close any schools, that's all I can say.
I do not think we'll be closing any school buildings. Carmen, can you hit the next slide? So financing, Donna talked about some of the financing. When we first started JSCB, we weren't the first city in the state to have them. Buffalo had one. I think the first one was actually in Niagara Falls. They just did like one phase, but Buffalo, Rochester, Yonkers, and us all have them. And it's basically sort of like the airport authority. It was sort of the debt doesn't hit the city books. Years ago, they had a plan to renovate a bunch of schools. They went to go get permission to do it and found out we couldn't do the projects because we didn't have the capacity, borrowing capacity. So outside of JSCB, the school district can only borrow $1 million a year for jobs, for capital projects. So what we usually do is we wait a few years, put them together, and do a project. And then we have other sources of money. So we have some ARPA funds, and we're trying to, right now we're trying to get 6 buildings done, replacing those windows that you can't see through, and buildings that aren't being renovated under JSCB Phase 3. We're trying to spread out the renovations throughout the district. So we do have other sources of money. We have some funds that we're refinancing, refinance some bonds and things. We can use that. And sometimes we do have some other sources, grants and things. We've been doing that. So we do have a plan to do some projects outside of JSCB. But basically, what I'm trying to explain to you in this side here is basically we have most of our eggs in the JSCB basket for renovating buildings. So next slide, please. So if you go back, Donna talked about it a little in the history. JSCB Phase 1, we did 4 schools. The original plan there was $225 million. We ended up doing $151 million. The local share was $46 million there. Now that's a little misleading because some of that was Excel money that was really a grant, but you could have used that money to build other things other than using it as local share. But we got $105 million of aid and $151 million. Now we went the JSCB Phase 2, which we just completed today. We did $300 million, and our local share there was only $12 million. So we have done a lot better. We've been able to reduce fees on professional firms. We've been able to reduce capitalized interest. We've worked really hard to do that. And we should be really proud, I think, of all the projects we've done. When we started JSCB Phase 2, we had, a school that didn't have walls inside. We had all sorts of issues, and we've taken on probably our most difficult projects in JSCB Phase 2. Now, one of the problems we ran into JSCB Phase 2, and this was a gift from one of our other districts in the state, was they added this rule to hold us to 1 MCA plus 10%, which is the maximum cost allowance. And a lot of our buildings haven't been renovated 40, 50 years, so we need more than 1 MCA really to get the buildings renovated. We asked the state, can we get double MCAs, and they said no. Later on, Rochester was able to convince them to do that, and we were able to get that for JSCB Phase 3, and that will make a big difference as we're doing JSCB Phase 3. So we can hit the next slide. Chris and Donna talked about it, but that's what we did in JSCB Phase 2. So we can hit the next slide, please. All that work was spread out throughout the city, JSCB Phase 2, and that's what we're looking at doing in JSCB Phase 3. So as Joe discussed, hot off the press, it's been updated to $400 million. We're looking to do 10 buildings in all 4 quadrants of the city. We want to complete the high school renovations we started in Phase 2. So we partially renovated Nottingham, Corcoran, and Henniker. We want to get back and finish those buildings. So You know, if you go to Nottingham and you walk in the main entrance, it looks very brand new. If you go down to the GW wing, it looks like the 1950s. So we want to get the whole building fully renovated. And same thing at Corker and Henniger to get those buildings in great shape. We've also worked on our middle schools and K-8. So when we're done with this phase, we'll have renovated all our K-8 schools. We'll have renovated all our high schools. When I first got out of college, actually it was one of my first days of work, I was working on Salem Hyde, and they were doing the renovations back then in the late 80s, early 90s. The district did work on a bunch of the elementary schools. So some of those schools have been renovated, and most of those schools will go into JSCB Phase 4. Some will go into JSCB Phase 3. It's going to be about 10 years to do everything because of swing space, borrowings, and how we do the money. Now, we've already knocked a year off there in our legislation because we had to finish 2 up and had STEAM and a whole bunch of other projects going on. Want to hit the next phase? Total, yeah. From legislation to getting handed the hard drive that Chris just handed to Mary and I a few minutes ago. So
Tom, the projects which you're going to go over right now for Phase 3, those are in the legislation? Is that
correct.
Right?
So that's a very good point, Mayor. So when the state did JSCB Phase 2, they came up with this concept, you have to do a comprehensive plan. We got to get public input through the city. We have to get public input on what work should be done. And then they called us up and said, oh, by the way, you got to name the schools. And we're like, well, you just said you want it. They go, nope, you got to do that. So what we did, and the school board approved this when Superintendent Alisea was here. These are what I call the initial set of schools. This could be changed through legislation, but we're going to go through the comprehensive plan. We're going to get public input throughout the city, and this is what we're looking at. The dollar amounts in there are based on the MCA, basically, what we can get out of the building from the state. And in some cases here, we got 2 MCAs. So what's nice in this phase, which we've learned our lessons, the JSCB advisory group, we're going to do what we call double MCA. So we're going to do Lincoln School. They're going to move out into Levy. We're going to gut the whole building, which that building has partitions that were added. That was originally an open concept building, and we're going to get the whole building done. They're going to move back into a fully renovated building. We're going to do that in 7 out of the 10 buildings. The only 3 buildings we're not going to do that in is the 3 high schools, because we don't have anything big enough to move everybody out of high school through. So those would be phase constructions. So that's what we're looking to do. All those buildings are looking at swing space. You know, we're going to finish up work we started at STEM at Blodgett. We got the outside of the building looking a lot nicer. Now we have to do a lot of the work inside. We'll be looking at air conditioning, HVAC, ADIA, instructional space, CTE, programming, all the things Mr. Gray was talking about before, a lot of the improvements. We'll be doing the same stuff.
Will all of these buildings get air conditioning if they don't have it?
We'll have to see. So unfortunately, we're going to have to go with what we go with MCA. So I'll use an example up there. The state makes the rules on building aid. So if you look at a building like Webster, the north side is packed, okay? All the schools up there, if you ask Deputy Superintendent Odom, do we have room up there? She's going to tell you, no. So Webster is a school that we probably would like to put an addition on. You know, we'd like to put maybe a 6-classroom addition. We do that addition, we may not be able to afford air conditioning. In JSCB Phase 2, one of the comments that came out from the public and staff was they wanted air conditioning in Nottingham. Originally, we were going to renovate the GW wing. That was the original plan there. And instead, we ended up putting air conditioning in all the classrooms instead of doing the GW. So we'll evaluate air conditioning on every single project. So we're going to have some challenges at a couple of these buildings. Now, the team we have is very veteran. We've been through this enough that we already know where we're going to have to watch. In the 2 places we're going to have to watch are Latin and Webster right away. We should be okay at the high schools, but, you know, we're going to figure it out. But we always, you know, as we go through, things change, programs change. You know, Micron's coming. All of a sudden, there may be a new career technical strand that I don't even know about right now. None of us know about that we end up putting in one of the buildings, you know, so. But that's what we're looking at initially. Again, the final dollars and stuff, that'll be done as the comprehensive plan. So Carmen, why don't you hit the next slide, and we'll talk about, we're looking at 4 different phases, and we pretty much prioritize this based on need of the building. Now, I did this with SCSD academic staff, our teaching and learning staff. This may all change when we do the comprehensive plan, but this is our initial plan. We're looking at doing 3 schools at a time. 1 goes into Shea, one goes into levy, and then the high school is done under swing space. Each borrowing is under 100 million, so we don't give Brad any headaches, or Nader, you're checking the bills. We're going to make sure everything's good. We got to do it in 4 phases, and it's really dictated by our borrowing limits and by swing space. The one place we can go is the Blodgett Auditorium. We actually can get in there early because nobody's in that, and that's now on. It's now solid on the outside. We can renovate that at some point. So that's our initial plan. Okay.
Tom,
Yes, sir.
a quick question on the swing space. So obviously, we're not making, that I'm aware of, substantial investments in levy and Shea, but they need to be serviceable for the students. Can you just talk about how you make sure that happens?
Sure. We actually did make some, before H.W. Smith went into levy, we added a playground and we added a school-based health center in there. So we have done some things, and we will do it again. And at Shea right now, actually, we're building our new network operations center there. We have a project there right now. So yeah, we will. The problem is we can't do the full gut and replace all the HVAC. So a lot of times it's paint, it's, flooring, it's painting, it's furniture, it's things like that. So
Using district funds to do that.
yes, that's how we've done it. Yeah.
I just, as a parent who has been through levy, school was clean. The school was painted and prepared. I felt that it was no different than being in Ed Smith unrenovated. I thought it was a great space to be in.
Good to know.
Oh, thank you. So we got, every time we think we got it down, the state changes things a little on us. So on JSCB Phase 3, they talked to us and they said, where's your facilities? And I wrote management plan, and that's wrong. It should be modernization plan. I keep on doing that. That's one of my Tom slips. But it's a facilities modernization plan. So the state sent us a letter saying you have to do a modernization plan. Now, we just submitted that to the state in draft. They're going to take a look at it. The advisory group, we worked on it together, came up with a schedule, and that's why we have all the phasing. Normally, we wouldn't do all that phasing until we were doing part of the comprehensive plan, but the state's asking for this thing up front. So they're asking for sort of like a pre-comprehensive plan. So we just submitted that to the state. Now, we also submitted all our STEAM school design. So we're working with them. We'll be working with them hand in hand over the next few weeks to get through. Once we get that facilities modernization plan approved, we will be getting into RFPs for the program manager, the financial consultant, and the ICO, independent compliance officer. So the JSCB advisory group will be working with you, and we'll be doing it the process just like we did before. So that's the next thing. We're going to talk about the development diversification plan update in a few minutes. After we have those contracts aboard, then we will start the comprehensive plan. We'll have meetings in all quadrants of the city. We're required to do that by legislation. Last time we did it, we had heavy attendance sometimes and not so heavy. We did hear a lot of things like air conditioning and things like that, but we did, those comments were incorporated into the designs and stuff. And that will do the full scopes of the projects. As part of the comprehensive plan, we also have to do the financial plan, figuring out how we're going to afford all this. We've done some of the preliminary work, but that might change. After we do that, then we hire the architects and engineer and construction managers. We'll get them contracts, and then we start the designs. Those designs go through the school board. They go through the JSCB. When we get ready to finance, that goes through the council, goes through those same parties. So, we'll be doing a lot of approvals. Some of you have been through it on different boards here. So we'll be doing all that. And then we go to construction and then close out. So we're looking forward to working on our next phase. We have a lot to do.
Questions for Tom?
When would you expect to break ground on the project? I know and I guess it's a simpler question. How long does the legislation and all the planning and bidding take?
You asked.
Right, look at that.
So can we get a copy of that?
Yes. So there's a lot of moving parts. So the reason we did all this is basically we had to do this as part of the facilities modernization plan. But we've looked at this as a group. There's a lot of moving parts here. So this is our plan that we have to follow schedule-wise. So it takes quite a while. There's a lot of things we have to do up front. I think we can do the comprehensive plan and some of the other things a little quicker because we've done them as a group. We know the pitfalls. A lot of our RFPs, I think, are good. I think can just update those. But, it does take time. We have to follow the process and, set up committees to review the proposals and things like that.
So, Tom, I'm going to push you a little bit more on that. We understand it's a dynamic and fluid process. We'd love to see a timeline as it stands right now, and I'd love to get for you to tell me where on that it answers Steve's question of when we hope to break ground on our first building.
Okay, yeah. So, I gotta put
The green, the blue, or the black line?
it's the colored ones, yep.
2024, 2025.
We're hoping in the spring of 2026.
April or May? What do you, just kidding. Just kidding.
I actually got it in February.
Get underway with the first projects.
Construction, yeah.
Spring 2026.
Yeah, we're looking at February 2026 if we can make.
I'll be cheering from the sidelines at that point. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, there's a lot of things we have to, a lot of, RFPs, we have to get a lot of things approved. There's a lot of oversight, so, but thank you, appreciate it. And I do want to thank Turner for all their hard work. They've been great to work with. We've enjoyed working with them as a group, and we do have a good team of people here working on all these projects, so thank you.
Great. Thanks, Tom. Thanks. Great job to you and your team getting through phase 3 or phase 2, and yeah, lots to do on phase 3. Look forward to working with you.
Mayor, I would, oh, sorry.
Are we anticipating a PLA as well?
I was just going to mention that, actually,
That adds to this timeline.
that has to be factored in with a study to justify it.
Okay.
The staff's aware of that, and we'll proceed to produce that study for your consideration.
Great. Good. Good question. Thank you. Okay. Looks like we have just the last resolution here.
Yes, so it seemed natural to, coming out of the Phase 3 presentation, to consider resolution number 12, which would be to approve the JSCB Phase 3 diversity plan. And the diversity plan that you have before you is essentially the same plan that we used in Phase 2. And as we saw from the last report of Landon and Ryan, we met or exceeded all of the goals using that plan. And so it's not broke, no need to fix it. I believe we, as staff, feel comfortable going ahead with essentially the same plan. But if the board has any questions or wants to hold it, to consider it for, for another meeting.
Looks like Mary Robison would like to.
I just wanted to further update that we have updated this plan to meet the city's current diversity plan. So it does add 20% well, I guess that was in the first one, wasn't it?
believe so,
20% residency. It does add the SDVB for contracts over 500,000. That wasn't in last time.
And for those not familiar with that acronym, SDVB?
The veterans.
Right.
Don't know exactly what it stands for. Service Disability Veterans Business.
Very good. Thank you. So either for Mary or Joe, excuse me, I know there's some discussion about with our enhanced capacity in our new division of equity and social impact. Rebecca, help me out here. Don't forget compliance, equity, compliance, and social impact. There's some questions about the role of a third party in overseeing the compliance part of it. What is reflected in the diversity plan relative to that? The plan still to contract out to a third party?
Yes, the plan still anticipates an ICO. I think that's, from a city budget point of view, there was always concern about the capacity of staff to do both JSCB and other city contracts.
I'm comfortable with that. I just wanted to make sure that's where we ended up and make sure everybody else is as well.
It's a dramatic improvement from phase 1 to
Right.
phase 2.
Seemed to work well.
Is the SDVB part of their
Veterans? Yes. And we'll have to, of course, develop a ICO RFP to include that, and it'll be in addition to, as Mary noted, we didn't have that in the first or second phases.
Other questions about the diversity plan? Sure. And Rebecca, can you just come up to the microphone and introduce yourself to everyone? I think I might have introduced you at a previous meeting. I can't remember. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rebecca Lumpkin. I'm the Assistant Director of Equity, Compliance, and Social Impact.
DESI is the acronym that
yes,
we're socializing. DESI.
DESI.
Yeah.
In regards to, so I wasn't here for phase 1, and I caught the tail end of phase 2. So I know that a third party was in charge of compliance. So how did that work with, I guess, this office? Like, what was the involvement with the city and the third party, Landon Ryan? Like, how did that work? Because I heard you mention, like, phase 1. Did the city have it first? Like, did the diversity office have compliance during phase 1, and then phase 2, we decided to go with a third party? Like, could you just give me a little bit of background on that?
Anybody want to speak to that? Got some folks with some historical.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Joe, did you want to add to that?
Confirming what Tom said, yes, in phase 1, we just had the in-house staff, I believe. And then in phase 2, we had your predecessor, Lamont Mitchell, developed a lot of this plan and worked closely with bringing on the ICO and working with them. You know, Lamont would go to the preview meetings with contractors, try to educate them about the opportunities with phase 2 and
right.
help deal with the potential prime contractors to educate them how they needed to comply with the diversity plan and to work out the few issues that came up with some non-compliance, et cetera. So the concept is the ICO would work closely with your office to implement the plan, but they would relieve your office of the kind of the
day-to-day.
monthly day-to-day payroll collections and data collection that they would input into the system for you to review, but they would kind of do the day-to-day work.
Thank you.
Sound good?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Good question.
I could add, the residency requirement was also added in phase 2.
Right.
Yes, so
It was
we,
not in phase 1.
correct, the 20% residency with a 2% sub-requirement for graduates of the school
That's right.
district.
Yeah. Good.
Which they also monitored.
They monitored, and I believe we met those goals.
Okay. Any other questions? Otherwise, entertain a motion to approve the resolution. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. All right. Any other business to come before the board?
I just want to say that the air conditioning thing, I'm going to be bringing that up constantly, because I will say one thing about Levy. I remember at one point taking my kitchen thermometer around, and it was in the high 90s in Levy, which is hard for a swing space, but it's also really difficult once your kids go back into a renovated building and they come home from school soaking wet with headaches, and it's clear that they've not been able to learn anything that day. The climate is changing. It is becoming warmer. Not having air conditioning is not fair. A lot of the kids don't have air conditioning at home either, and they don't get a break at all. And it's not a frill, a comfort thing. It is are you going to be able to do school today thing.
Well, if my two kids were here right now, they'd be cheering for you, Karen. So, point very well
the
taken.
teachers as well,
Yeah,
the people
amen.
who work in the building.
Yeah. So it sounds like there'll be some difficult choices that we have to make, but certainly understand and appreciate your priority and expect you to continue to make sure it's top of mind. All right. Anything else? Okay. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
I went to Red Smith and Levy, they didn't even know